I was standing behind my front door with my hand pressed flat against my chest when she spoke from the hallway, calm, steady, as if she had rehearsed the moment long before it happened. "You're looking, and we both know it." The words didn't come with anger or embarrassment. They came the way facts do, the kind you don't argue with, because doing so would only make you sound foolish. For a second, I honestly thought my heart would give me away before I ever turned the handle. And if you're watching this now, I want you to hear this clearly. I wasn't hiding because I wanted to spy on her. I was hiding because opening that door meant admitting something about myself I'd been carefully avoiding. I froze where I stood, listening to my breathing, knowing that whatever I chose next would quietly define the kind of man I was becoming. I'm 38 years old. 6 months ago, a cardiologist studied my results longer than I liked and finally said, "You're not old, but you're no longer invincible." He delivered it gently, like advice meant to be accepted without protest. Then he gave me 3 words, the kind doctors repeat when they've learned patients don't listen the first time. Sleep, movement, people. He said them like a prescription. I nodded like a man who believed he had time. I work from home, technically my own boss, which sounds impressive until you realize how easily days can blur together when no one is expecting you anywhere. Somewhere after 40, or close enough that it starts whispering in your ear, your days stop being built around ambition and start leaning on rituals. The neighbor who takes out the trash at 7 on the dot. The older woman downstairs walking her dog at 7:30. And her. My 52-year-old neighbor from the second floor. She always came home looking a little more tired than the day before, yet somehow more composed, like someone who had learned that exhaustion wasn't an excuse to fall apart. I noticed these things not because I was searching for romance, but because routines become anchors when your own life feels unmoored. That evening, I was at the window again, not leaning forward, not pressing my face to the glass, just standing there, pretending to check the weather, pretending I wasn't waiting. The truth was simpler and harder to admit. I wanted to see someone make it home. Someone still moving through the world despite pills, tests, unanswered emails, and adult children who called less often than we once promised we would. When she finally appeared, it was later than usual, a small pharmacy bag swinging from her hand. I shifted the curtain just enough to see if she was steady on her feet. That's when she looked up. No hesitation. No searching. Straight at my window. I stepped back so fast my chest tightened, and I had to lean against the wall, telling myself it was nothing, just adrenaline. A minute later, there was a knock. Soft. Unhurried. The knock of someone who understands that waiting has become part of adult life. Through the door, her voice was even. "If you're checking whether I made it home in one piece, that's honest," she said. Then a pause, deliberate enough to feel heavy. "If you're hiding from your own life behind the light in my hallway, that's something else." I didn't answer right away. Standing there, I felt the weight of a choice that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with me. Open the door and accept the truth about why I'd been watching. Or stay silent and remain a man who preferred the safety of a curtain. I thought about the nights I lay awake counting my pulse instead of sheep. About my grown kids, busy and good-hearted, living lives that didn't need me the way they once did. About how easy it is, after a certain age, to confuse privacy with loneliness. When I finally opened the door, she wasn't standing close. She respected distance, the way people do when they've learned the hard way. Her eyes weren't sharp or accusing. They were observant. "I'm not here to shame you," she said. "I'm here because pretending we don't see each other gets tiring." I swallowed and spoke before I could polish the truth. I told her I was scared. Not of her. Of waking up one night with no one aware I was struggling. Of becoming invisible without realizing when it started. She listened without interrupting. That alone felt rare. "I see you looking," she said quietly. "And I need to know something. Are you looking because you're afraid to be alone in this? Or because you're just passing time?" The question landed heavier than I expected. It wasn't flirtation. It was a boundary. For the first time in a long while, I felt the urge to be honest outweigh the urge to protect myself. I told her the truth. That I didn't want to grow older pretending I was fine while quietly unraveling. That I didn't want another winter of closed blinds and unanswered calls. She nodded, as if confirming something she already suspected. Then here's the line, she said. If you keep looking, don't hide. And if I let myself notice you too, I won't pretend it doesn't matter whether you make it through your own hard nights. When she left, the hallway light went dark again. The apartment felt quieter than before, but not empty. And standing there, I realized the tension wasn't about neighbors or windows. It was about a decision I couldn't postpone anymore. Continue aging carefully alone, or risk being seen for exactly who I was. I didn't know yet which path I'd choose. But for the first time in months, I knew the choice was finally mine. The next morning, I woke up to a silence that felt wrong, like a familiar song missing one instrument. No coffee grinder from upstairs. No quick footsteps crossing the landing. Just sunlight sliding through my blinds and the steady thump of my own pulse reminding me I was awake again. You know that feeling when your mind starts writing explanations before you've even put your feet on the floor? I did that. She's traveling. She's sick. She's fine, and I'm ridiculous. And then, because my brain loves worst-case scenarios, I pictured that small pharmacy bag from last night and a stairwell no one used. I'm 38, I work from home, and I've gotten good at looking composed while my body quietly argues with me. 6 months ago, a cardiologist told me, sleep, movement, people. He said it like a man who had watched too many patients turn into numbers. I listened for a week. Then I slipped back into my old routine, deadlines, screens, and pretending I didn't mind the quiet. So when I realized I hadn't heard her, I almost did something I would have mocked in another man. I rehearsed a reason to knock. Wrong package. Power outage. Just checking in. Anything that didn't sound like the truth. I noticed you because you made my hallway feel less empty. I didn't knock. Instead, I made tea, no sugar, because apparently that's my life now, and stepped onto my balcony like it was an accident. The air was cold enough to wake the corners of my lungs. Across the gap, her balcony door slid open. She appeared in loose sweatpants and an old hoodie, hair tied back, and she had that same pharmacy tote, only this time it looked lighter, like some of the weight had been spent. She didn't look surprised to see me. That was the first small shock of the day. She nodded at my mug. Cardio. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Cardio, I said. My kids told me I'm too young to complain about blood pressure. My doctor was less optimistic. That earned a short laugh from her, dry, tired, honest. I'm 52, she said. My doctor tells me I'm in great shape for my age. And all I hear are the last 3 words. She said it without fishing for pity. More like she was naming a weather pattern. I told you yesterday wasn't about romance, and I meant it. But standing there with her in the morning light, I understood something else. When you've lived long enough, attraction isn't always heat. Sometimes it's recognition. The relief of being seen without being turned into a joke. She rested her forearms on the railing. You looked last night, she said, like we were discussing something simple, like the mail schedule. I don't mind it if it's honest. But I need to know which kind of honest. I tried to laugh it off. That old reflex. What kinds are there? She didn't play along. The kind where you're checking whether I made it home safely, she said. And the kind where you're hiding from your own life and borrowing mine as a distraction. I swallowed. Because the second one was uncomfortably close to the truth. Here's the part you'll understand if you're in your 50s or you've ever watched time speed up without warning. There are moments when you can feel your life splitting into 2 futures. One where you stay careful and alone. Another where you risk a little dignity to tell the truth. I had a choice. I could put on the pleasant neighbor mask and say, just being polite. Or I could admit that some nights I sit at my kitchen table and listen for sounds in the building like they're proof I'm not the last man left. I wasn't counting your steps, I said finally. I was counting returns. Like I needed to see someone make it back. Her expression softened just a notch. That's a better answer than most men give, she said. Then she surprised me. What did your cardiologist tell you exactly? No one had asked me that with real interest in months. So I told her about the midnight episode, the racing heart, the EKG, the doctor's calm voice, the way he said invincibility runs out quietly. I expected her to step back, to look uncomfortable. She didn't. She nodded like she'd heard the story 1,000 times. I'm a CFO for a medical network, she said. Not a doctor. But I live in statistics. I know how fast people go from fine to why didn't he say something sooner? The word sooner hung there between us. We talked about pills and labs and the small humiliations no one warns you about, asking your grown kids for a ride to an appointment, then hearing, I've got work, like work is a wall you can't climb. She told me her daughter lived out of town. Mine are adults too, scattered and busy. Good kids. Just far. She watched me for a moment, then said, I don't want to be someone's hallway story. Not again. If you're going to be in my line of sight, be real. My mouth went dry. What does real mean to you? It means, she said, if you're afraid, you say it. If you're lonely, you don't hide behind a curtain and call it privacy. And if you keep looking out for me, you do it like a neighbor who respects me, not like a man collecting a plot. That last word hit me. Plot. Because I've done that. Not with her, but with life. Turning people into interesting scenes instead of letting them matter. I could have defended myself. I could have said, I'm not that guy. But the honest thing was harder. I look because I don't want to die scared and unnoticed, I said. My voice came out quieter than I expected. And because when your light is on, the building feels less final. She held my gaze. Then she nodded once, decisive. Okay, she said. Then we set a rule. If I'm late, you text me. Not the building chat. Me. And if you have a night like that again, you don't tough it out alone. My phone buzzed right then, a message from my oldest. Hope you're good, Dad. Busy week. Talk soon. Talk soon. The phrase people use when they don't know how close not soon can get. I looked back at her, and I realized the real choice wasn't whether to text her. It was whether to accept that someone was offering to be part of my hard nights, and that taking her up on it might change the quiet balance of my life. Before I could answer, she added, almost casually, I have an appointment this afternoon. Routine. But I hate going alone. She paused. Come with me. Just as a neighbor. The sun was bright. The request was simple. But my chest tightened anyway, because I could already hear the building's whispers that didn't exist yet. And I knew that whatever I said next would decide whether last night was a one-time confrontation or the beginning of something I couldn't hide from. And I stood there with my tea, realizing the safest answer was also the loneliest. I didn't speak. Not yet. My phone lit up at 9:17 p.m. with a notification from our building chat. And before I even read the words, my stomach dropped the way it does when you see flashing lights in your rearview mirror. Someone had posted a video. Grainy, vertical, shot from a lower stairs like a security clip. Me standing by her door, her leaning on the railing with that small pharmacy tote in her hand. Then the caption, joking like it was harmless, looks like we've got our own little drama. Young neighbor and the older neighbor. Hope his wife knows. I watched it twice. Then a third time, because shock makes you stupid. And if you're watching this, you know exactly what I mean. How a single sentence from a stranger can shrink your whole world down to one ugly spotlight. I'm 38. I work from home. I've been divorced 3 years, which means I don't have a wife to know. But the comment still hit like a punch. Not because it was true, but because it turned something careful and human into a punchline. It took the quiet agreement Clara and I had started building. Be honest, don't hide, don't turn each other into a story. And tried to pin it to the bulletin board for entertainment. Clara. That's her name. 52. Composed in the way people get when they've had to stay composed for decades. The kind of woman who doesn't waste words, and who somehow made "Are you okay?" sound like a boundary instead of a flirtation. After our balcony talk, I'd walked with her to her car for that routine appointment. No touching, no dramatic movie moment. Just two adults moving through an ordinary afternoon. We didn't announce anything to anybody. We didn't need to. But apparently privacy is a myth when your neighbors have phones and boredom. The worst part wasn't the clip itself. It was the way it made our building feel smaller, like the stairwell had eyes. My own phone buzzed again, my oldest texting, Busy week, Dad. Everything okay? I stared at that message longer than I should have. Because everything okay is the question that always comes too late, and because I could feel my pulse quicken the way it does when fear and shame start sharing oxygen. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I kept staring at the video, thinking about how fast a person becomes a rumor, and how fast a rumor becomes someone's truth. I stood in my kitchen with the chat open, thumb hovering over the screen, and felt two instincts fight inside me. The first was the old one: stay quiet. Let it blow over. Don't feed it. The second was newer, and it scared me more: say something. Be a grown man in public, not just in private. Because here's the truth: when people gossip, the younger man usually gets to stay the good guy. The older woman becomes the headline. I'd seen it at work. I'd seen it in families. And last night, Clara had said, plain as day, that she was done absorbing other people's jokes. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again. My heart started doing that irritating flutter that always shows up when my pride and my fear share the same room. 6 months ago, that flutter sent me to the ER at midnight. Now it was a reminder that my body didn't care whether the threat was medical or social. It reacted the same. Then another message popped up in the chat. Laughing emojis. Someone wrote, "Relax, it's just a joke." And that line, "just a joke," made my jaw tighten. A joke is what you tell when you're sure nobody will pay for it. I heard a soft knock at my door. When I opened it, Clara stood there with her phone in her hand, but her screen turned down, like she didn't need evidence to speak. She looked tired. Not physically, professionally. The tired of someone who's had to manage rooms full of people and still come home alone. "I saw it," she said. "I'm sorry," I blurted, too fast, too small. She didn't take the apology and call it a day. "I'm not here to hear sorry," she said quietly. "I'm here to understand what you're going to do." That landed hard. Because she was right. My feelings didn't matter nearly as much as my actions. "My daughter lives out of state," she added. "Someone will send her that clip. And then I won't be explaining who you are. I'll be explaining why I let myself become someone's hallway story again." Again. One word, and a whole history stepped into the room. I pictured Clara younger, maybe at work, maybe with a colleague, maybe smiling too politely while people decided what she must have been doing. I pictured her paying the price while the man stayed clean. And I realized something uncomfortable about myself. If I stayed quiet now, I'd be choosing comfort over character. I wanted to promise her I'd fix it. But promises are cheap when you're afraid of being judged. So I told her the truth. "Part of me wants to disappear," I said. "To let it fade. To avoid being the topic." She nodded like she expected that. "And the other part?" "The other part knows that if I stay quiet, you'll be the one who gets labeled." I swallowed. "And I can't ask you to carry that." Clara exhaled, slow. "Then don't." After she left, I closed the door, sat at my table, and stared at the chat window until the cursor blinked like a metronome. I had a choice: protect my comfort or protect what we were trying to build. Two people refusing to hide from aging, loneliness, and the way the world loves to simplify you. I started typing, this time without trying to sound clever. "Hey everyone, that video is misleading. Clara and I are neighbors. We've been talking about health stuff, blood pressure, appointments, the kind of things you deal with when you're not 20 anymore. If you want to joke about something, joke about my terrible tea. But making someone's age the punchline isn't harmless." I read it 3 times. My hand shook a little. Then I hit send. The chat went quiet in that strange way it does when a room full of people suddenly remembers there are real humans behind the screen. For a full minute, nothing. Then a message came from a woman I barely knew. That was my nephew. "I'm sorry." I told him to delete it. Someone else wrote, "Video removed." And the clip disappeared. I should have felt relief. I did for about 3 seconds. Because what I felt next was heavier. The awareness that I just stepped out from behind my own curtain. That I declared, publicly, that Clara mattered. And once you do that, you can't go back to being invisible. You become a person who can be pointed at. My phone buzzed again, this time a private message from an unknown number in the building. Good on you for speaking up. Not everyone will be kind about it. No name. No apartment number. Just that. Clara looked at me from the hallway, and for the first time, her composure cracked into something softer. Thank you, she said. But as she turned to leave, she added, almost under her breath, now we'll see who else was watching. I knew something was off when the building got polite. After I posted that message in the group chat, the hallway didn't suddenly feel safer. It felt watched. You know that thin, uneasy quiet when a room full of people pretends nothing happened, but you can feel their opinions hanging in the air like cigarette smoke? That was our stairwell for the next few days. Doors closed a little faster. Hellos came out shorter. Even the elevator seemed to take longer, as if it didn't want to deliver me to my own floor. And Clara, my 52-year-old neighbor, went still. No balcony in the mornings. No soft click of her key at the usual time. When we crossed paths on the stairs, she gave me a quick hi, eyes forward, moving past me like she was late for a meeting she didn't want to attend. I told myself she was busy. I told myself it was normal. But you don't spend weeks learning someone's rhythm and then not notice when it changes. If you're watching this and you've lived long enough, you know what I mean? Silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a decision. By the fourth day, I started building excuses in my head again. Things I could say that sounded casual. Everything okay? Need anything? How'd your appointment go? The problem was, every one of those questions came with a shadow. I wanted reassurance. I wanted her to tell me I'd done the right thing. And that's not a fair thing to ask from someone who's already been made into a story by other people. So I waited. Then, one evening, I saw her sitting in her car in the lot, engine off, phone to her ear. She didn't notice me at first. The window was cracked just enough for her voice to carry. I'm not doing this again, she said. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. That one word, again, hit me harder than the video ever did. Because it wasn't about a nosy neighbor or a stupid comment thread. It was about history. About a pattern she'd already survived. She kept talking, steady and controlled. I'm not absorbing gossip, so a younger man can stay the good guy. I won't be the headline while he gets to be just polite. I stood there with my grocery bag cutting into my fingers, suddenly aware of how easy it is for a man my age to slip back into comfort. To say the right thing in public once, then retreat and let the woman carry the long-term cost. And here came my choice. I could walk away and pretend I hadn't heard her. Give her space, let time smooth it out, protect my own reputation by staying quiet. Or I could step into the discomfort again and risk being seen, really seen, as connected to her. Not romantically, not scandalously. Simply as a man who refuses to hide when it matters. My chest tightened the way it does when my body senses a threat and can't tell if it's physical or social. I hated that. I hated that I could feel my heart arguing with my courage. I walked toward the car anyway and stopped a respectful distance from her window. She noticed me, paused, and ended the call with a quick, clipped goodbye. Her eyes met mine, and they weren't angry. They were tired. I didn't mean for you to hear that, she said. I'm glad I did, I answered, because it was the truth. The again part. I didn't know. Clara looked down for a second, then back up. There was a time, she said slowly, when I tried to be kind and ended up being a rumor. People remember the rumor, not the kindness. I nodded, not trusting myself to fill the silence with something stupid. Outside, the parking lot lights hummed. Inside my chest, everything felt too loud. I saw what you wrote, she added. It was brave. But brave for 1 minute in a chat isn't the same as being brave when it gets uncomfortable. That line landed like a weight. Because she was right again. That night, I didn't watch the hallway. I didn't stand by the window. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone, thinking about my kids. About how they text, talk soon, like time is guaranteed. About how I'd been hiding behind privacy the way some men hide behind work. And I wondered if I was about to do it again. Hide, only this time I'd call it giving her space. Around 11, there was a knock. When I opened the door, Clara stood there without a coat, hair slightly undone, face honest in the harsh hallway light. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't cold either. She looked like someone who had finally decided she'd rather risk discomfort than keep guessing. I pulled back because I needed to know something, she said. When that video went around, who were you protecting? Yourself or us? The question wasn't cruel. It was surgical. I felt my instinct rise, the instinct to explain, to defend, to sound good. But another part of me, the part my doctor was trying to save, wanted the simpler truth. At first, I admitted. Myself. She held my gaze, letting me sit in it. And then, I continued. I realized you were the one who would pay. Not me. And I didn't want to be that kind of man. Clara's shoulders dropped a fraction, like she'd been holding something up for days. I'm used to men your age, making jokes and going quiet, she said. And someone else, usually the woman, pays the price. I'm done with that. At work, at home, everywhere. There it was. The boundary. The challenge. The invitation. My internal choice wasn't romantic. It was adult. It was this: keep living careful and alone, managing fear with routines, or let someone close enough to call me out when I hide. I can't promise I'll never be afraid, I said. But I can promise I won't disappear behind silence. Clara studied me for a long moment, as if she was deciding whether to believe my future, not my words. Then she nodded once. Good, she said. Because tomorrow my daughter is calling. And if she asks what's going on in my building, I want to answer like a woman who chose her own story, not like someone who got assigned one. She turned to leave, then stopped at the top of the stairs. And for the record, she added, voice softer, I didn't stop coming out because of them. I stopped because I was watching you. Watching me. The hallway light buzzed above us, and I realized the pressure had shifted. I wanted to say something clever, something that would make it lighter. But I could feel my heartbeat steadying. Not from relief, from commitment. The kind that costs you comfort and gives you back dignity. It wasn't the building judging us anymore. It was her deciding whether I was safe enough to stand beside. Not as a secret, but as a man. I didn't sleep the night after Clara left my doorway. Not because of excitement. Not because of fear. But because once a question has been asked the right way, your body knows pretending is no longer an option. I lay in bed listening to the building settle, pipes clicking, an elevator humming somewhere below. And for the first time in months, I wasn't counting my heartbeat. I was thinking about what kind of man I wanted to be when someone else was finally paying attention. If you're watching this and you're somewhere past 50, you know exactly what I mean. At a certain age, big choices don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, wearing ordinary clothes, asking to be answered without drama. This was one of those nights. The next morning didn't come with a speech or a sign. It came with a dull gray sky and my phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. A message from my son. Dad, sorry I've been out of touch. You okay? I stared at it longer than necessary. For years I'd answered questions like that with a reflexive all good. That morning I didn't. I typed. Some days are harder than others. But I'm managing. It wasn't a confession. It was a crack in the wall. And strangely, my chest felt lighter. I made coffee, real coffee this time, sugar and all, and sat at the table without turning on the TV. I kept thinking about what Clara had asked me the night before. Who was I protecting? And beyond that, who was I willing to stand next to when it cost me something? Around noon, there was another knock. No urgency. No hesitation. When I opened the door, Clara stood there in a simple coat, hair neat, eyes clear. She looked like someone who'd already made her decision and was checking whether I had too. I don't have a lot of time, she said. But I didn't want to leave things suspended. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd spent too many evenings convincing myself I was fine. She didn't look around. She didn't comment on anything. That mattered more than politeness. I'm not looking for a late-life romance, she said calmly, as if reading from a document she'd revised carefully. I've done drama. I've done secrecy. I've done being understood only when it was convenient for someone else. I nodded, not because I wanted to agree, but because I recognized the fatigue behind her words. I'm looking for honesty, she continued. The kind that doesn't disappear when it gets uncomfortable. If we stay neighbors who check in on each other, I need to know you won't retreat the first time someone whispers. And if you decide this is too much, I'd rather know now than slowly. There it was. The final choice. Not between her and solitude, but between intention and avoidance. I told her the truth, without rehearsing it. That my fear wasn't of gossip or judgment. It was of waking up one day, realizing I'd lived quietly, carefully, and alone because it felt safer than being seen. That the night my heart raced and the doctor spoke softly, what scared me most wasn't dying. It was doing it unnoticed. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she didn't reassure me. She didn't correct me. She just said, then we're talking about the same thing. We talked about logistics, not dreams. About her daughter, who lived far away and worried in silence. About my kids, good people with full lives who assumed their father was sturdy by default. About work, aging parents. The strange math of time where years feel shorter but nights feel longer. I don't promise ease, Clara said. I promise clarity. If I pull away, I'll say why. If you get scared, I expect you to say that too. I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, not panic this time, but weight. Responsibility. The kind that doesn't come with guarantees. I can do that, I said. Not perfectly, but honestly. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, she added. I won't be hidden. Not from neighbors. Not from your kids. Not from yourself. After she left, I didn't rush to the window. I didn't listen for her footsteps. I sat down and let the silence exist without filling it. For the first time, it didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space, something open, something undecided. That evening I called my daughter. Not to explain, not to announce anything. Just to ask how she was doing. When she asked about me, I didn't give her a summary. I told her I was learning to be more honest about what I need. She was quiet for a second, then said, I'm glad. Later, as the lights in the building went out one by one, I realized the story wasn't about a neighbor or an age gap or a moment at a door. It was about choosing presence over comfort. About deciding that growing older doesn't have to mean shrinking your life to what feels safe. I don't know what the next year looks like. I don't know how long Clara and I will walk this road side by side. But I know this, when my heart stumbles again, and it will, I won't be hiding behind a curtain, pretending I don't see anyone. I've learned that the real risk isn't being talked about. It's being invisible. And this time, I've chosen not to be.